Hello, welcome to Breakthrough.
And welcome back. Good to see you, Christian. Good to be with everyone once again. We've been on the road.
Yes.
Various parts of the states, and but good experiences, and we'd just like to take this episode to talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks since we've been on here with an episode, and because we were both traveling, separate travels and separate missions, but both really important to the work that we both do, and wonderful way to kind of bring it back to one here, share a bit about both of our experiences as we get closer to summertime here, and we have a few more great episodes here lined up, and then we start to kind of wrap up what's been a really great second season here. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, grateful for all the viewers, being faithful and tuning in, and good feedback. So if anyone wants to hear particular things, just send us a message, and we'll be happy to share out on that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we have a nice little family, I think, of people that are watching and being part of this, which is really exciting. But yeah, so I was in Pittsburgh and you were in Racine?
Racine, Wisconsin. Yes. Right on beautiful Lake Michigan. The Racine Dominicans have Sienna Center. So I was there with my sister Susan Wilcox and Karen Burke for the Land Justice Futures Gathering. And this is the second one because we are, Sisters of St. Joseph of Brentwood, one of the initial focus communities that this project has. We're one of 7. And then this year is the second year of their program. And there's 9 other religious congregations from across the United States that are really working with the Land Justice Futures as movement partners to create any kind of work with land or transitions that are rooted in racial and ecological repair. And so this small staff of people are just so inspiring and so supportive, in helping us look at these big decisions coming our way.
Yeah, and it's a pretty new group, and they just rebranded a bit too, right? So for some listening and watching, what was the previous name?
Formerly, they were the Nuns and Nuns Land Justice Project. But they did rebrand themselves because everyone knows of the Nuns and Nuns, Sisters and Seekers, and they're pretty much a group of young millennials that might not be affiliated with any particular church or religion, although I would say many of them are Christian. And but they look to religious sisters and building that relationship pretty much because of community, of prayer practice, and which always leads you outward, in works of justice. So it really has been a wonderful aligning of a relationship, of resources, and again, as thought and movement partners, because they bring such an energy and a fresh insight and wisdom that really is helping us look differently on how we think of land and how we're caring for, and living. And and then it makes our land ethic, and documents that we have put together, helps us to live into it more deeply.
Yeah, the land ethics statement, you can find it online, but if you're ever visiting the campus, it's on placards throughout the campus at valuable points and places. And anytime I'm giving someone a tour of the campus, I always love stopping there and showing that. And it always gets this response of like, wow, I would have never, this is so forward thinking and so interesting to have an organization that's like putting out not only a declarative statement about what they're going to do with land, but also this open invitation to say, we need to keep learning and growing. It always amazes people.
Yeah. And that's the cultural shift that is happening and needs to continue to happen, is that, we're not looking at private property, but we're looking at the common care of the land, because it's all living, and it's all, and going from rights, we own this is our right, to more of a responsibility, and even beyond responsibility to obligation, from a mindset of domination to one of interdependence. We need each other to live and to thrive, because there is enough to go around for everybody. Yeah. So that was a little bit about, we can go back to me, but just an overview of what you were doing in Pittsburgh.
I was in Pittsburgh, which is a lovely city. I was there with the LCWR group for Transforming Grace. And so LCWR is Leadership of Congregations of Women Religious. And it was a really wonderful gathering that was focused on justice workers, justice promoters, communication employees and partners in mission, and then leadership. And so it was a very focused gathering of the three pieces coming together from each congregational group to learn, grow, but then do work together, and to really focus in on, all right, how are we dialed into what our justice work is or could be, and then how are we communicating that out? For some people, the communications, and this was the energy of the room, there's like 300 to 400 people there. It was a really great group. But there were some groups that were very honest, saying, they hadn't really thought much about the way that communications and justice flow together, other than just email blasts and stuff. And so it was a really fruitful opportunity it was really cool to see too, so many of the communicators who, as I sat there, I got to learn, a lot of them feel very left out from different things, not by anyone's ill will, but by just the nature of not maybe having congregations understand the value of communications. So there were a lot of people there that had this energy of being so grateful and eager to be at the table. And then leadership, of course, but just to kind of, because there was a lot of head and heart, and there's definitely moments where I'm like, all right, praying, like, how do I really make this click for what I need it to be, beyond my internal. And so what we came away with in a lot of the breakout rooms and things was this idea that you have transforming grace, but I don't know, Joan, if you've ever really thought of this, but transmutation of grace. So this idea that we transmutate ourselves first before we can go forth and transform the world. And I'd say I've never heard it that way. And I know I'm still pretty young, but I've been in a lot of different conversations, and it really opened up the experience in a new way. This idea of like taking the time to really transform or transmutate the way that we do things inside our hearts, and then take it out. And so the call was that every congregation really needs to transmutate, which sounds kind of fun. It sounds like X-Men. I felt like a superhero thing. And you have to do that in your own congregational groups, and then you go out and transform. It was really cool. It was cool. And Pittsburgh's awesome. I love Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I've never been. I'll have to get to the Steel City one of these days. Nope, never been to Pittsburgh in all my travels, but cool. I'll put it on my bucket list. That's interesting, the transmutate. I never heard of that either as well. But it does make sense in the fact that, we learn and are formed to our way of life by those who know us and love us and want the best for us. But it is, given our times, because that's what we spoke about too at the Land Justice Futures Conference too, is that, it's time for a culture shift, and it is shifting. And everyone is so fond of Pope Francis's that we're not in an era of change, we're in a change of era, right? So what worked, in the past worked for the past, but now how do we unlearn, transmutate, right? And so that we can have that transformational breakthrough to bring about the new and what's needed for our times, right?
Yeah, and maybe what worked in the past didn't work in the past. It worked for some, or it worked in this one way.
Well, exactly.
We thought, it's like dieting and like food and exercise and stuff. When you kind of like, you figure out something else that's better for you, and then you realize, wow, I can't believe I ate that before. Like now with what we've learned, you say, oh man, and smoking, even, like all these different things where you start to, you say like, oh, we thought this worked in the past. And once you start to think like that on a macro level, you can also think of it on the micro level and disseminate it out. And it's really powerful. It's really, and it's also very simple. It's very, very kind of shocking how you sit there and kind of go, yeah, I probably should know this already, but
Yeah.
about myself or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to hear it,
Yeah.
see it, feel it,
Mhm.
taste it, touch it a few times before you really, it's like, it clicks. And I also found too at the gathering that we were at is the power of story again.
Mhm.
So when you have someone, right in front of you, eye to eye, heart to heart, and they are sharing their story, and then you're like, oh my, I had a sense of the injustice, the
Mhm.
mistreatment, the abuse, but I didn't realize the extent of it. So that really,
Yeah.
touches deeply the heart, and then makes one think, definitely made me think, is, all right, well, what is mine to do now?
Mm.
And who am I joining with, to get it done? So the whole power of the personal story
Yeah.
really helps to start that process of transmutation, so that I can be transformed, that we can be transformed for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that came up in ours too, in the sense of naturally many of the we should say too, our conference, the Transforming Grace, was like your typical hotel ballroom kind of thing, but it was at the coolest hotel ever. That was like, just again, Pittsburgh's awesome, but it wasn't your typical, okay, someone's going to speak for this really long period of time, you're going to go into other rooms. We
Mm-hmm.
were in one room together, and we had cycles of tables, so you
Mm-hmm.
got to know your table partners for different
Yeah.
moments of times. So it was intimate but also diverse in who you got to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And there was so much time for table discussion and work on the materials. And a lot of it too is like this trust of, we're going to trust that most of you are kind of up to speed, and if you're not, well, then go back to your room and study up a little bit. And,
Yeah.
and it was nice, actually. It was really nice to kind of have that accountability,
Mm-hmm.
and to just dive right in. And to tell me the story part was a huge part of that, of this, especially with dealing with the politics of this year and the election, all this stuff, of how we have to listen to each other's story. We have to ask that question too of, tell me your story.
Yes.
And you have to ask it with sincerity and say, tell me more about yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let me understand better, because most people, outside of the few, intense people, most people, they do have some sort of human experience that is leading them to an opinion, even if we don't agree with it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to understand the different perspectives,
Yeah.
because I love the Haitian proverb, we see from where we stand.
Mm.
So if I'm standing here, here's my view. But if you're standing over there, you have
Yeah.
a different view. And to listen to that, and to honor and to respect it.
I had a cool moment. We were in one of the breakout groups, and this is just a weird off the cuff story, but I'll say it. We were doing this workshop thing about tell your story and all this, and I made reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger in my sharing. Yeah, earlier.
I'll be back.
Yeah, I'll be back. I said, I said part of my story. I really, I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger said something one time, and this one person in the group like rolled their eyes at me and like made a comment about him as like judging his character, and she had every reason to. Like, he doesn't have like greatest track record in some ways and stuff. But there's been plenty of things written about. But it was powerful, and I stopped her and I said, "Ooh, this is great. Let's do this, because what you just did there, you know." wasn't very nice. Like, and we called, and she was like, yeah, I didn't mean to roll my eyes. I didn't mean to do this thing. I was like, no, but because she's like, he's just a womanizer. He's done all these things and all these things. I'm like, you're right. Like, that stuff is proven. However, I was born in another country. I grew up knowing I was an immigrant, but not really understanding that. And then when he was a star, as I was a kid, a lot of kids in my school grade and stuff were joked about, oh, Austria, Romania, this connection of, oh, look he's got a jawline like you and all this stuff. And for me, he became a hero because he was how I could understand the idea of immigrants from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she heard that, she was like, oh, that's really lovely. I was like, but don't get me wrong, I'm not walking around advocating for his daily decisions. But it was a really lovely moment where she was like, oh, I'm gonna have to revisit that. The way I think about that. That's really cool.
And those are the breakthrough moments, right? If we can sit, and if you can listen to me, and I speak in a way that you can understand, and then I listen to you, what a difference that makes in, again, perception, and understanding. And then there's, there's greater respect and civility.
Right. And it's a shame that conferences like these for us, are sometimes the only way that we can, like, the safety of that table made me feel confident to say, like, oh, let me interrupt you for a minute and say that wasn't cool, but let's unpack it together. And it was great. We had an awesome night, and like it was so fruitful. But like, where do we, and I know I'm just kind of ranting here because this is interesting, but like, we have to really prayerfully think about how we can engage in that in our day-to-day, and like, where in the coffee shops of the world and all these things can we make room for that? Because it's one thing when trusted folks that we know can have those kinds of things, but we got to figure out how to push it out there because people need it.
Yeah. Well, and even what you were saying is that the expectation was set that you come prepared. And if you're not, I mean, it's our responsibility, right? And then if I come prepared and can share my information, and then you share yours, then we continue to create the picture and get a fuller picture before we, start shooting off from the hip or cutting people down and that's never helpful.
No,
never helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're about to, enter into some really hostile territory this year, and it's, so we need to really prayerfully open our hearts to others, even others that maybe we have an idea about them already. We need to, filter through that to figure out where the nuggets of reason are, because I think most people are pretty reasonable, and most people have something within their heart that makes them think one way. And so but hey, so the real core here that we have to step away from is that you need to go to Pittsburgh and I need to go to Racine, because I've never been to Wisconsin. So
okay, lots of cheese and Kringles is the kind of like breakfast cake for of choice. They love it. Yes, one of these days I will make it to Pittsburgh for sure.
Oh, good. Yeah. Lots of Mr. Rogers. That was my encounter.
Okay. Yeah. But more importantly is that we continue to do this work of justice that is very much grounded in our spirituality of active, inclusive love. And that, we continue to live and work in ways with open hearts and open minds if we're going to make any breakthroughs in this sadly divisive world that we're living in now and hostile.
It's a lot of prayers to be said and had. But we got a few more episodes here before we wrap up season 2, and excited to ride out into the sunset for this season. This has been a really lovely journey, and grateful to all of you who are watching.
Yes,
our little community here that is growing, and that. But what is so lovely is that it's really sustaining, and that we feel like we have, like I said, a community. And so please send us messages. We should maybe on the last episode we'll put a little a number of what it call. Send us a little comment or something.
Yeah, no, that would be great. It's always good to hear from you're hearing from us, but we like to hear from you.
Yeah.
Communication is important, and it's always great when it's a two-way, at least a two-way street, the back and forth. The mutuality is important.
Sure. All right. Well, have a great day.
All right. You too. All right. Take care, everybody.